So hello everyone, welcome to our first Service Speaker Series Assembly of the Year.
In this series, we invite individuals to share their experiences working with NGOs in the field through a UN SDG lens. Our first speaker of the year is Ms. Joan Liu, founder of Second Chance, which is an NGO that helps high-achieving students in the developing world who cannot afford to access post-secondary education attain scholarships so that they can pursue further studies. Most, if not all, of their students come from conflict or post-conflict zones and developing countries. Some of their success stories have been reported in world media. So put your hands together for Ms. Joan Liu.
Hi everyone. It's really nice to be here. I flew in from Singapore, so I am a little jet lagged, but it's really nice to be here. And thank you for welcoming me to your community. I'm here to talk a little bit about bystanders, college education, and the impact that has on our lives. I have been a college counselor for the past 25 years. So I have been in school literally since I have been in kindergarten. And I do what your comprehensive counseling office does, which is that I help you all go to college. That's been my career. And as Hannah and Nelson said, I run a nonprofit now called Second Chance at Higher Education. And today I'm here to tell two stories that I'd like to share with you all, and I hope that it gives you a bit of insight and reflection into something that could also help you. So let me take you to Taiwan. That is where I'm from, as you can see, although you can hear an American accent. And this is my dad, when he was your age. He was one of 9 children in his family, and the one thing that he wanted more than anything was to go to school. He lost his dad when he was 9 years old. And his dad was a bricklayer, and his mom was a housemaker. And my dad was a really talented student, so he would walk several miles to school, and he became a really high-achieving student and ended up getting a scholarship to Taiwan Normal University, which is in Taiwan. And then one day, one of his friends said to him, "You know, I think that you should apply overseas. There's this scholarship in Canada at the University of Alberta for Taiwanese students. And I think you should apply." So my dad, on the basis of information from a friend, applies halfway around the world to the University of Alberta. And he goes there. And my dad is the scholarship recipient, but I'm the beneficiary. Because were it not for my dad going from rural Taiwan to the West, I wouldn't even be standing here today. I wouldn't even have the life that I have. I wouldn't even be able to speak English. And so, because my dad got that scholarship, I then was able to grow up in the United States because my dad stayed in North America and married my mom. And I grew up in Missouri. And then went to college in tech in New York, where I worked at a high school teaching English. And then 6 years later, I went to Istanbul, where for the very first time, I saw what my dad saw. I saw how important it was to get an education overseas. And I hadn't seen that as an American growing up in Missouri. Why? Because I was suddenly working with all of these students who desperately wanted to go to America. And in fact, one of them, who was from Armenia, said, "You know, your country has been at war with mine, but I still want to go to the United States for my college education." And so I got a chance to see how important it was for higher education to be in somebody's life, because my dad, because he went to college, made it easier for me to go to college because I was coming from a college-ready household. And that makes everything easier. I was at a Turkish national school where I got a chance to learn Turkish, and I got a chance to be part of a minority for the first time. And by that I mean that when I was teaching in New York City, I didn't know what Ramadan was. But then when I went to Turkey, I was the only person who didn't. And that gave me a really important perspective on the world, being on the margins. And it was there that I learned a little bit more about how to do college counseling. And then fast forward, and I'd like to share another story with you. So this is my second story to you today. And I'd like to take you to Southeast Asia this time. I'd like to take you to Nepal. And I'd like to share the story of Roman Shrestha, who 7 years ago was sitting where you are sitting. Those of you who are in 12th grade, like I know I just talked to Nelson about college admissions, and early decision is around the corner. EA is here, November 1st is a couple days away. And Roman is attending a Nepali school. He doesn't have comprehensive counselors. So Roman does a couple of things, starting in grade 6. He starts to learn English. He knows that English proficiency is his way to a more global life. And Roman starts to learn English outside of his Nepali school, and he takes the SAT. This is no small feat in Nepal, because to take the SAT, he had to go to the capital city of Kathmandu. He's not from Kathmandu. Nepal has a system very much like my dad's system in Taiwan, where you take one national test and you go to college. You don't have things like third-party endorsement where your comprehensive counselors are writing letters of recommendation. You don't have teachers who are writing letters of recommendation. And so he has to teach his teachers how to write a US-style recommendation. And he does that. He persuades his principal to fill out something called the secondary school report, which the principal has no idea what this is, because he's not coming from the same system. He has to find resources. He has to ask his friends what to do, so he starts to talk to older students about what they do to get to college, and he goes to a very special and important place in Kathmandu called Education USA. You actually have one here in this country and in this region. There are 470 Education USA offices around the world, and he goes to get free information. Now, the thing about Roman is that Roman needs a full scholarship to go to the United States. So he's done all of this. He's taken care of standardized testing. He's figured out the system. He's figured out the teacher recommendations. He's figured out the secondary school profile. And he's figured out how to take the SAT. And he takes the SAT and he gets a great score. He gets a 1450, even though neither one of his parents have gone to college. And unbeknownst to Roman, Roman is entering the admissions Hunger Games. Because when you need full financial aid in the United States, you are looking at less than 1% of the market, and you are looking at less than a 1% admit rate. So if you're here and your parents can afford to attend college, you already have a huge advantage in the college admissions process, which is what I had when my dad allowed me to go to college, because he'd already gone to college. So Roman goes on all these Facebook posts, and he finds out about the University of Texas, not the University of Texas at Austin, which is the famous one, but he finds a smaller school called the University of Texas at Tyler, and he applies to UT Tyler, and he gets in, and he gets in with a full scholarship. And then Roman does what every other Nepal student does when they get a full scholarship, which is that they start to say no to all their other offers or all their other gaps. You know, by all their other gaps, meaning that if they've applied to other places and they've got a gap, they say no, because now we've got a full scholarship. And then, after the college admissions process is done, so you know how April 1st you guys will find out where you go if you're applying to the United States, where you're going to go, because that's when decisions are released. So after April 1st, on April 13th, after the admissions process is done, Roman finds out that he doesn't have his scholarship anymore. He's worked for this for years. And because there is a misbudgeting mistake at the University of Texas at Tyler, Roman finds that he no longer has a future. And he can't do anything about it, because who is he supposed to tell? So the University of Texas at Tyler made a mistake, and they then told students that they had to revoke the scholarship. And this is after the US process was already finished. So this was national news, as you can imagine. It was not the fault of the students whose scholarship had been revoked. And Roman goes from being a top student at his school, who has been a role model in his community, and who has told his village, and who has been the pride of his parents, to being what none of us want to be, which is a casualty. A casualty of somebody else's mistake. Half a world away. And it's not just Roman, it's also Roshan, who was also an incredible student. He also lost his full scholarship to University of Texas at Tyler. It's also Rupesh, who had scored in the top 1% of the national exams in Nepal. It was also Nielsen, who said that this was by far the worst feeling he had ever felt in his entire life. And it was also Krishna Sharma. I want you to look at Krishna's eyes, because I think it's something quite extraordinary, the depth that you can see, the substance of this student. Krishna is a son of a farmer, mother and a father who were both farmers. And he, when I met him, did not even have the resources to buy shoes. And this had been his ticket to a much greater life. And Krishna, upon hearing this news, thought about taking his own life, because he thought, I don't have one anymore. So we're watching all of this in Southeast Asia, and you know, a lot of us are thinking to ourselves, gosh, somebody should do something about this. But who? Because there's not some sort of international admissions team or international admissions national something. I mean, there's no, kids can't access the US legal system, they're not Americans, and they don't have any money or resources, and they're half a world away. And as far as Americans might be concerned, this is a newspaper article. It's not somebody that they know personally. So these kids went to Education USA, and they asked for help. They went to the office, and they said, please, can you help us? And a woman there, her name is Selena Mala, and she is an educational advisor, just like your comprehensive counselors and like myself. She had been the recipient of a scholarship in her life. She had gone to the United States on a full scholarship, and she knew what this meant. And she knew that if we didn't fix this mistake, it would be one whole more generation before this could be solved. And so she sent out a huge email to everybody that she knew, and she put it out on social media. And several of us in Southeast Asia saw that call. And what we did was we and some Nepali counselors all came together, and we bonded and called ourselves, somebody called us the Nepal Justice League, which I think is a really funny name for us. But we basically tried to mobilize a movement around these kids. And guys, when I say we didn't know what we were doing, we truly didn't know what we were doing, because who's working after April 1st? You're done. Your comprehensive counselors here, they're done. And so are you, by the way. Like, if you're not done by April 1st, you're taking a gap year. And so we thought, gosh, how can we help all of these kids get a scholarship by the time we get to fall? Because that is exactly what these kids wanted. And the single guiding question that we asked ourselves was, what is one thing I can do to move this forward? So that's a question that's really helped me in my own life. And it helped us as a team. Well, one person thought, okay, I'm going to build a website. They knew that they could build a website. And another person said, okay, I know something about social media, I'm going to put this out on Facebook. Somebody else said, okay, I know something a little bit about fundraising, I'm going to do a fundraiser. Somebody else said, oh, let's do a Twitter storm, and let's write to Eric Hoover at the Chronicle of Higher Education. So all those articles that you just saw are the result of somebody on our team doing a strategic Twitter storm with the students. And Eric Hoover woke up to 40 kids from Nepal tweeting out to him, and he decided to write 8 articles on this. I called my brother and I said, what do I do? And he said, you get something called Zoom, and you put the kids on Zoom. And so what we tried to do then was we tried to find these students, put them on Zoom, and we leveraged our networks, and we asked everybody in the higher ed community to please come forward if they had one last scholarship or money sitting around at the last minute. We were kind of hoping for a miracle. And what was amazing was that universities who didn't make this mistake decided to help anyways. It wasn't their mistake, they were bystanders, but they decided to help contribute to solving the situation. And so the first school that came forward was SUNY Korea, and Roshan, who you saw, who was in that newspaper article that I flashed up in front of you, went to SUNY Korea. By the way, he had no idea he was going to go to South Korea, but he was courageous and said, okay, I'll go. And that's Nielsen there as well. Today, Roshan is a Google software engineer, and Nielsen is at the Texas A&M studying data science. Rupesh, whose face you also saw on a newspaper article, ended up at Robert Morris University because the woman standing next to him asked her board, what is one small thing we can do for these students? College of Idaho came forward, and slowly, students started to be able to go to college. And about halfway through the process, you can see I took a trip to Nepal, and a lot of students ended up in places that they had never even heard about until basically 2 weeks prior to this picture. And they were gonna go. And they ended up going to Germany and Canada and South Korea and other places in the world. And I'm gonna fast forward for time, but at the end of all of this, we did find 60 students. 56 of them were able to get a full scholarship. 54 went, 2 did not get a visa. And 3 years ago, these students graduated from their respective schools. That is Roman, who is the newspaper casualty that I first talked to you about, and he ended up going to school in Colorado and graduating with a degree in chemistry. And that's Roshan, who I just spoke about, who graduated from SUNY Korea. Krishna Sharma. Northwestern University of Qatar. There was a gentleman there whose name is Fred, and he went to his VP of enrollment and said, what can we do? And Fred said, I think we could manage 2 seats. And Krishna went. Krishna was one of the 2 students who went, and he became a wildcat, and he became the first student body president from Nepal. And Krishna's here today. Krishna, would you like to wave? You're in the back. Krishna is the program coordinator now at the Institute for Advanced Study in Southeast Asia. He is an independent columnist, and he writes on populism, democracy, polarization, and revolutionary activity. In fact, Krishna, I think when I looked at your LinkedIn this morning, you had just written about what happened in Nepal. Everyone, I would say that a lot of people, when we were doing this, said a lot of awful things to our team. And there will be things that people will say to you when you try to stand up for other people. They will say things to you like, they're not your kids. Why do you care? It's not your family. What does this have to do with you? You don't even know anything about Nepal. What gives you the right to try to help these students? And what I've learned is that you really shouldn't listen to other people when they are not in the arena with you. So if you are working on something hard and you are standing up for somebody, for example, who's being bullied, it's okay. You do what you think is right. And the other thing that I've learned is something that my 10th grade teacher said that I will never forget. He said, when faced with somebody else's problem, someone else's dilemma, it's not important what happens to you if you get involved. It's really important what happens to them if you don't. I know that several of you and groups of you are working on important issues around the world, including Palestine and including South Sudan, and that there are a lot of you who are involved in community service. And the framework that we used that I want to share here is simply the following. Ask a question, what can I do to make this better? And that can even be as small as you stand up for somebody in class who gets interrupted way too much, and you amplify their voice in the same way that we asked press to amplify the voices of these students. You build a team because you can always do more things with a team. You mobilize the resources that you have. None of this getting involved cost us any money. It really cost us the cost of Zoom, and that was it. And it cost us our time and our expertise, but I wouldn't even say that it cost us that, because this whole thing that has happened actually gave me a new opportunity to found a nonprofit, which is something I would never have imagined myself doing. You leverage a network, and the most important thing is to keep going. Keep going when something is really hard. There were times during this whole shenanigan where I thought, I don't really know what the next step is. And then I would just say to the team, what do you think we can do for today? And that might be a small thing like a phone call, or even talking to somebody else to see what would be the next step. And we would count that as a win. So I would say to you all that it's really important when you are able to stand up for somebody else to go ahead and do that. It's not easy to do, but I would say that because somebody stood up for my dad, I'm here today. And because Selena Mala asked everybody to help, Krishna Sharma is able to sit here with us as well. So my final word to you is all to be a destiny bender. Don't be a bystander, be a destiny bender, be a trajectory changer, and in this way, you can make a strong change in the world. Thank you.
Thank you again to Ms. Lu for sharing your insight, experience, and stories in working your service efforts. And once again, thank you to everyone for attending our first service speaker series. You are now dismissed, and please exit through the back doors. Thank you.